Well, let's unpack the Broncos. Beaten yesterday by the New Zealand Warriors, 32 points to 16. Now, I will reference this by saying yesterday, no Jordan Ricky, no Reece Walsh, no Pat Carrigan, no Payne Haas, no Adam Reynolds. Gajeski went out with a broken arm in, I think, about the 7th minute. Fletcher Baker did his knee. They had 2 blokes on the bench. But they've lost 4 in a row. They haven't won since Magic Round, a 13-12 win against Manly. And Gordy, they'll finish this round outside the 8. Where are they at?
Oh, they're probably a little bit sluggish to where I thought they were going to be. Obviously, coming back from Vegas, they didn't hit the ground running. They've had injuries, right? And that's no excuse. Payne Haas has missed some games.
Yep.
None of the players, and I'm talking about all of them, none of them are in the form that they were last year. Watching them play against the Warriors, for me, it's their effort areas that really need to improve, but that comes back to the individual. You don't lose your mojo. There was a couple of tries that the Warriors scored yesterday were just far too simple and easy early. They put themselves under pressure, but then it's like when they decide to start playing footy, they're dangerous and they get back into the fight. But you got to go to the fight. You got to put the gloves on before kickoff. And I think Brisbane have just struggled to do that. I think there's a bit of, I'm waiting for my teammate to do it. And I'm sure Kevy will address that. And when everybody's swinging, they'll be right.
Yeah, well, there's 5 blokes that, you know,
there's
got to come back in.
There's 5 great players that aren't in there, right?
Yep.
And then, you know, and there's no excuses, but no Flegler and Farnworth and a few others. So, but like I've read all the papers today and like it's a mistake and that. No, it's not a mistake now to lose that game and get a fresh bunch of guys. If Brisbane are going to go on a run, Payne Haas, Carrigan need to be at their best. Reece Walsh need to be at their best. And that article, yeah, it's fair and it's got merit. But I walked in the Queensland dressing room and I saw how beat up those guys are. If you keep on draining it, if you keep on flogging the dead horse, if you keep on making them go to the well, and I know it's a badge of honour, right? And it used to be, but that's past now. It's about winning grand finals. And it was a badge of honour for us to back up. Now I think it's getting your best 17 ready for the grand final after those big games. Gemma?
Yeah, you're right in what you say, Gordy, about arguably some of the mentality of the Broncos players in sort of having that knowledge within themselves that they can play a lot better, that when they're at their absolute peak, they can beat anybody in this competition. I think yesterday's result, for me, I'm not interested in yesterday's result if I'm a Broncos fan because, you know, travelling over to New Zealand, you know, the week after Origin or a couple of days after Origin, of course you're going to elect to rest those players. That, for me, is not the concern. The concern is they've not beaten a top 14 this year. So we need some evidence to suggest that we can do that. But also, they've dropped the ball a couple of times when it comes to take advantage of beating some teams down the lower end of the table, which would have put them in the top 4. And I'm talking specifically about the performance and the result against the Titans, all respect to the Titans, and the performance and the result against South Sydney. You take those 2 games, you just look at those 2 games, they win those 2, and then they're 9-6, which puts them in the top 4 at this moment in time. We were at that game against the Titans. We watched it live, and they just lacked that ability to concentrate. And it's a word that Kevin Walters has used a lot in his press conference. He used it the same against South Sydney. We're not focusing. We're not concentrating for 80 minutes. We're just having lapses. So that is where it becomes an issue. For me, looking at the Brisbane Broncos, it's what's happened previously. It's not the fact that they lost over in New Zealand. The thing is, though, like everybody around the game knows, they've got it in them to go on the run. But it's all right saying that and knowing that, but they've actually got to go and do it. And I think this is where post-Origin, your Haas, your Carrigan, your Walsh, your Reynolds to an extent, obviously he'll be back a little bit later on, they get together and say, we're not going to blow this opportunity. Reynolds is aging. Ezra Mam, throw him in that mix as well. Those are the type of players that need to come together and get their act together and drag this team to better results.
The bigger picture issue as well, Jimmy, to your point there, is that they're now looking perilously close to missing the top 4. And history shows us that if you don't finish inside the top 4 and you get 2 cracks at it, then it is a very, very difficult mountain to climb. So I think at the beginning of the season, most people had, a lot of people genuinely believed off the back of last season's results and the roster that they've got, that the Broncos were a red-hot shake of winning the competition. Now, I think because of the games that you've just spoken about that they've dropped and also the mountain that they've set for themselves, I think their title credentials are starting to look shaky.
At this time last year, round 17, 2023, they'd had 11 wins. They've had 7 wins so far this season, the exact same point. So they're 4 wins behind where they're tracking. Now, they didn't get the minor premiership, but they were equal top side in the competition by the end of it. Gordy, you worked and played with the biggest names in the game at the time, Wendell, Alf, and they were superstars in Brisbane. But I've never seen anything like the fans going crazy and the support for the Walshes and the Carrigans at the moment. Do you think that's affecting the club?
It's something different that I didn't have to deal with, right? And
because it is different to every other club.
It's part of the game, right? We didn't have social media. Like, we went out and, the people, it was a totally different era. So to say that some of those guys, they love that. They love all that TikTok.
Yeah, but is it affecting their football?
Well, that's a question. That's a question for them. Playing in front of a packed house, I don't think that would affect you. Have they got, the cart before the horse? Well, that's probably something, because I'm not in the dressing room, but that's something that they might have to address. And I, remember so many coaches telling me, get your head out of your scrapbook because it doesn't help you on Sunday. So, I just think with Brisbane, and then Gemma made a really good point, and there was 9 minutes against the Sharks, right? There was a 1-point win against Manly. They have dropped their standards. So they just, sometimes, and we've all been in that situation, that you just think that it's going to work. You're going to turn up to work and the shovel's going to be there and I'm going to get my job done. It doesn't work that way. You got to rip in early. And I don't think Brisbane, and to watch Katoni stage yesterday, his opening defence was atrocious.
Yeah.
Then in the second half, it's a totally different beast. But why didn't he start that way? So I just think that individually, if I'm coaching the Broncos, individually, please have a good look at yourself and tell me where you can improve, right? Because as a team, we're not getting the results.
Well, you know what, Gordy? You bring up a very good point, and this is the modern footballer in general. How many times do we say a player will go out of form? Oh, I'm off social media now. It's like, well, hang on a minute. So you want to take all the likes and all the love and all the comments about how great you're going. But as soon as the proverbial hits the fan, I'm going to block that out. So maybe it's time that the Broncos players went, forget Beatlemania, forget Broncos mania. We're going to get a grip of this team. And what's more important, Beatlemania or winning premierships? And let me tell you, it will be winning premierships for the Broncos. No one's going to remember the fact that there were superstars in the city and people were laying in front of the bus. Nobody cares about that. Gordon, you can speak to that yourself. You'd know all about that.
I think you were in that area, Gordon. You had that kind of fame here. And I know you're saying, nothing, but you're right. So far, you're so right, James.
And you can get in front of yourself, right? You can do that.
You can do all you
stop working as hard and you think that you've made it. The day you think that your game's at its best, the day you think that, and you just cut corners. And what I mean by that, like you touch every line, but you used to do 15 minutes of extras. Your diet used to be good. You used to get the right amount of sleep. All those little things. So that's what built up on me.
Well, Gordon,
like the extras, going to the boxing gym and, doing 10 rounds and stuff like that's what gave me the edge. When I stopped doing that, I had no edge on the footy field.
Yeah. Well, also, mate, you get the validation from people who you don't know or whose opinions that you wouldn't go and seek. So you get that validation from, let's be honest, teenage girls who are on social media that like everything that you put up, that will never tell you the truth or criticize the performance. They're just going to like everything that you throw out there. Now, if you chase that level of validation, you don't know these people, but if they're boosting your tires up, and this is how the social media work. Like, I get the validation, but then if somebody says something, I block that. So I'm in this echo chamber of love, which is fine and great, and that's how some people operate. But I think that the Broncos players need to because they do have the potential. They're a fantastic team to watch. And even just looking ahead at what they've got around the corner, and we've already spoken about 2 games in particular that they've looked at or that they would be looking at and going, if we'd have won, we'd be in the top 4. If. It's a big if.
Mate,
you can't afford that many of those. So next up, they've got Penrith, which is obviously going to be a very difficult task. Again, they've not beaten a top 4 team. They play the Dragons without their origin players, but that's a bit of an even Steven because the Dragons are affected. Their 2 best players. I fancy the Broncos should be able to get the victory. The interesting one for me is the Knights post-Origin. That's one of those games that they might need those lads to back up and just scrap their way to victory against the Knights. I think Ponga may be back for as well at that point in time. He's close. So that's one of those games that, we start to talk about, will you make the top 4? They might miss the 8. If they can't beat Penrith, the Dragons, they should. The Knights, if they don't beat that, then the pressure.
If they don't win those 3 games, that they are a chance of missing the 8, Jammer. And I'm not being smart. If they win 2 of the 3, they're fine. 13 wins is the magic number to make the 8. We all agree with that.
No one at the Broncos has put their hand up, and I'll say it right now. Right, I played with a guy, and then we were under the pump, and Wayne challenged all of us. The littlest, smallest guy in our team got up and grabbed the Nico pen and wrote M-O-M on the board, and it was Elf. He put himself in front of everybody, and we looked because it was a bit of it was a fiery meeting, right? We weren't playing our best. Wayne challenged us, and our leader picked up. Who's going to do that? Who's going to put themselves out there and say, you follow me? Because if he does that and he goes and has a crack, everybody will follow him because he'll embarrass them into not following him.
I don't know if that player's there at the moment. And I mean that.
It's Carrigan.
And I say that.
Who? It's Carrigan's your man.
It's Carrigan.
Carrigan's
They're
your
the
man.
leaders, bar none.
And he's obviously got that state of origin going on at the moment, and that's all well and good. But he's got to have a block of football post origin that elevates him to why people are talking about him being Australia's next captain.
They go sit down. I don't know what they do these days. We would have a carton of beer, myself and Webby and the boys say, and we'd look at each other in the eye, and we'd have a chat and say, we're not going to have another beer for 6 weeks. Let's have a crack now.
But also, we're talking about potentially if buts maybes they don't make the 8 or they scrape in the 8. This is a team that would have ambitions at the beginning of the season, top 2. Not top 4. They're going top. They would have ambitions for top 2. That would be
no doubt
the pass mark. That would be the level of expectation from within in those 4 walls of that football. Internally would be, we are a good enough side to be a top 2 team.
And there's going to be more pressure on Adam Reynolds. How does he come back? Is he going to come back so super fit and hard, like really hard? He tore his bicep. You don't run on your bicep. If I'm him, he should be putting Ks and Ks and kicking and doing everything possible mentally. Like you hear when Nathan Cleary's out, he's in there just watching videos of every team he's going to break down, where he kicks to, what he does, and he comes back and he hits the ground running. So they need everybody doing everything possible.
Yeah, but the issue is, Gordy, he's not back till round 23. So by that stage, if they don't get things together very quickly, the grand final rematch is huge.
Make the
Friday night.
Listen, I had a look, right? They go Panthers, Dragons, Knights, Dogs, Titans, Cowboys, bye, Eels, Dolphins. Right? They can, if they have a crack
Storm
on
to
ability,
finish it off, isn't it, Gordy?
And Storm's the last one. And they got to buy in round 24, right? And by then, Melbourne might be resting their players.
Yeah.
Right? So you don't know, because the last couple of rounds, it's sort of a bit like Origin, right?
Yep.
So you don't know how they can win 6 out of those 9 games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that'll get them in.
Right?
That'll just get them in because that'll mean 13 wins for the season.
But that's not their ambition, though.
No.
But
you're right, Jammer, to your point from earlier.
Let me tell you something. If they get into the finals fit and everything that we talk about, and Payne Haas gets his mojo back, Carrigan, and they start looking like the side that played Penrith last year, I'm telling you now, you don't want to play them.
I think a lot of teams agree with you on that, Gordon.
But then they've got to get back to that. And do you know who gets them back to that? The individual.
Yeah. And you asked about Adam Reynolds, and obviously we recognise the level of importance of the halfback and how good he is in that football team. But there are different ways to skin a cat, and there's different ways to get victories. And you're not always going to have your top line players available. You're naive to think that you would be. Like Reece Walsh has been out a lot. Payne Haas has missed some football. But they've got to find a different way to get a win and scrap their way to victory. The game against Souths and the Titans are 2 that stick out to me, where it's like how they didn't beat the Titans that day. Go back and watch the opening 10 minutes. Reece Walsh. Look, but remember Reece Walsh. The Titans kicked down to him, And it
Bo
was just
Firma was defending in the centres,
it was
and Desi had to keep
insane.
on changing him side by side.
Should not have got beaten.
No.
Just quickly, the Warriors win after a flogging last week.
Is that the biggest turnaround?
Biggest turnaround
so
ever.
what
But-
game do we swab them in?
Yeah,
Did we
but-
swab them last week or this week?
Well, I look at the halves combination. No Sean Johnson, and they win again. Tamari Martin
they
and
played
Harris
better
Tavita are
without
up.
Sean Johnson. This
It
year they
seems to
played
be.
that month of footy where they came up, and I think we even called it Gem of the game. They played, I think, Penrith here at Magic Round, and then they had it's like they had no big names. That was outstanding. Like Magic Round, some teams or some fans would follow teams. They had the whole stadium. That was the biggest movement of like fans that we felt that day. They were just all behind the Warriors because of how they galvanised. And I think that might be it. I don't know what's wrong with Sean Johnson, and he may be injured, and we judge him on his performance. But the Sean Johnson we saw last year, this year,
Different players.
oh yeah,
I think he was
different
trying to
players.
play busted for a number
That's
of
right.
weeks this year, Gordy. That's why
Yeah,
his
that's
form's
right.
dipped. But they're going to have some big decisions to make because he's still off contract. I don't think he has agreed to a contract extension for next year and beyond. And if these young blokes that are in there now continue to go well and they win, and they can somehow make a run at trying to make the finals, well, then the club's got big calls.
Isn't it funny, that the Roosters came in big for Johnson for a 2-year deal, knocked it back, and
Yep.
just
Unreal.
a week's very long time in football, isn't it?
It certainly is.
Jesus, we build them up and
First
knock them
half,
down, build them up
second
again.
Half of footy.
Let's talk Game 2 State of Origin. New South Wales outstanding, 38 points to 18 at the MCG. 90,000 people were on hand, and New South Wales were clearly the dominant side. No question, they deserved to win. From the kickoff, they were very, very good. The couple of big talking points out of it, one of them being Coach Billy Slater in his post-match press conference when asked about whether or not he'd make changes. This is what he said.
I haven't even thought of that. We're still Queenslanders.
Billy, you said we're still Queenslanders. Can you just elaborate on that? What do you
Well,
mean?
we're from Queensland.
Yeah, I know, but you asked if you're going to make changes and you said we're still Queenslanders.
Yeah, I said I haven't thought of that, and I said we're still Queenslanders, so that's it.
Does that mean we don't make changes?
I don't know. I haven't thought about it, so I honestly haven't thought about it.
Yeah, that was Brad Walter asking the questions, and Billy, rightly so, a little snaky, and he was trying to say his Queensland. He's just spoken on Channel 9. This is what he said in response to those comments that he made in the press conference.
Look, that comment was probably not even referred to from that question. In tough times, you've got to remember who you are. And, Queensland had a tough night. We got 5.5 million people up there, and this is their footy team. And, they'd be hurting from that performance. But at the end of the day, it's 1-1 in the series, and there's a decider in 2.5 weeks. And, Queensland will remember that. They'll remember who they are, and the players will remember who they are. And that was referencing that.
Gordy, do you like the response?
He just sort of said, mate, it's like the Roosters way. We should have just said, it's like the Queensland way. We will just dig ourselves out of this. It's a Queensland way of dealing with it. No, do you know what? I personally, the way I can't speak for Billy. But when he said that, to me, thinking, no media is going to put pressure on me to pick the side that I'm going to pick. I'm a Queenslander. I'll do what I want to do to make sure Queensland's in a spot. Right? And I know that. And then I just think that's the way we feel. And that's come from, like, I've heard Wally Lewis do podcasts. I've heard him everywhere that he's said that I was so fortunate that when I didn't have the greatest game for Queensland, that the media didn't eat us up and let the boys give us time to recoup so we can get back into battle. And maybe Billy's just channeling all the guys that have been before us, that our media generally doesn't eat us up as much.
I think he was hurting Gordy, no question,
Absolutely.
from
I
the
was shocked.
magnitude of the loss,
Yep.
as he said, as all Queenslanders would have been. But I also think he was just trying to flat bat the question. He didn't want to go into 10 minutes, 15 minutes, however long the press conference was after the game. He didn't want to
who's
start
gonna go.
unpacking who might be getting shifted,
Well,
what
also-
changes might be coming in.
He wants to back his players, and he's not going to throw his players under the bus.
Yeah.
Like the
100%.
last thing anybody wants to hear is
Neither
like,
them.
there'll be changes. Or who? Who are you
Yeah.
saying? Is that a bad game? There's nothing worse than a coach in a press conference that puts the
Before you've
blame on his
jumped out of the
players.
shower, or
Like-
before you've got your kid off, your coach is saying that you might not wear the jersey
Yeah.
again.
What's interesting is if he will actually go down that road and if he does think that the team needs a little bit of tinkering.
Well, there will be
with.
one change. Well, because
Yeah,
Xavier Coates has
Coates
gone.
is out.
Xavier Coates is definitely out for
Hamstring?
game 3 with a hamstring. He's confirmed that today. So there's one change
Well,
there.
maybe Cobbo comes.
Well,
straight
Cobbo,
back.
who was banged up and couldn't play in game 2 but played outstanding last night, I think he comes back in, and I'm just going to leave that where that is. You know, he played well last night.
He selects himself, Cobbo. But as I said, right after the game, and you were there, and I did an interview, they needed to regroup, right? So they need to pick themselves up. They need to go back to their clubs. They need to have a couple of weeks to put their hands back up and show that they want to be part of game 3. And then they said, oh, what do you mean? Are you going to make changes? I said, no. Show the coach that I'm prepared to go back there and have a go. I'm not going to say that Queensland are going to make changes. There's Dave Fafita, there's Selwyn Cobbo, there's the guys that played, right? But who knows what Billy's thinking? Because in week 1, when you said that Cobbo was going to be on the thing, I nearly choked. But it happened to work, right? So where Billy goes, I know that he will decide that will be the best way possible to win this series for Queensland.
Well, also, Gordon, I don't care which players come in. No one is going to be able to withstand from the 7th minute, 6 sets in a row that you are defending, then have only 3 sets in a row for 23 minutes and concede 4 tries. I don't care who you're bringing in. Ain't nobody stopping that.
Wally Lewis could have played for us.
Well, mate, it just for me the issue for Queensland would be how do we manage that period of sustained pressure again? What little things can we do as a group to turn the tide? Because
very rarely you get 6 sets in a row. Very rarely in a game, any game that I watch this year. Very rarely you get the 6 again, and you get that roll, and you can put that much pressure in the early part of the game.
I like Ashley Klein.
It's a very extreme example. So
why would you think I'm talking about Ashley Klein?
There's a couple of moments there in that game. Like when people say New South Wales won the start, they actually didn't. The first 7 minutes, Queensland were on top. Jaden Sewer made that break. Yep. Reece Walsh was making inroads on that left-hand side. Crichton did that flick pass to nobody. It looked as if Queensland were coming, but then it was that block of possession and that level of dominance where I think it surprised everybody. It surprised most people, even within that Queensland team, because it was such an extreme example. Reece Walsh kicking it out on the full, you just go, like little moments like that maybe the young player needs to go, I can't go for the ultimate kickoff here in terms of landing it 2 meters from the sideline and 2 meters from the in goal. I've just got to get it down there, and we'll just cop that a little bit. Let's not run that high risk level of kickoff. And that's one way that you can look. There are also other ways that you can look in terms of what you do as a team to not have that level of sustained pressure.
You raise an interesting point around Reece Walsh, Jimmy, because by Reece's standards, he had a very quiet night. And you go back to State of Origin 1, when he was taken out of the game.
But in the first 7 minutes, Hoops, he was looking dangerous.
Absolutely he was, yeah. But then the end result, Reece's involvement was relatively nullified, right? You go back to game 1, and the hammer absolutely blitzed it at fullback. Now, I'm not knocking Reece, right? He's an out-and-out champion player, but he's also very young. As you just pointed out there, he's only 21 years of age. So I think this could be the biggest decision that Billy has to make, because Billy's been there himself. Billy has been there himself as a player, where he has been dropped from State of Origin, and he had some bumps in the road over the course of his career as a younger player, and he knows better than anyone what he needs out of his fullback to win a decider in Queensland.
Are you suggesting that he goes with hammer over Reece Walsh, Hoops?
I'm just saying that if you watch the game closely,
I did watch it.
And it's more to the point. Reece hadn't had a game since State of Origin 1.
That's the
thing. And then he didn't play again.
He'll get 2 weeks.
He didn't play again last night.
Perform.
Yeah,
he'll play against Penrith.
He's got
play
the
against
Panthers
Penrith.
with a great kicking game, a great defensive structure.
Yep.
Right. And then
so that's a perfect opportunity.
That's it.
If he goes out against Penrith and he performs the way that we all know that he can.
It's that one game against Penrith is what he's got.
We don't have any other centres. So Gay Guy, right? So there's Val. So with the winger situation, right? There's Gay Guy, Val Holmes, and Tabuai Fido, right?
Yep.
So whether Tabuai goes on the wing, who knows what's going to happen, right? But then
what about Selwyn?
Yeah, then he's in that mix as well. Right? But and I heard Ricky Stewart blow up too, just for the game, right? just for the game. You know when they do 6 again? Do you know when they do 6 again?
Yeah.
When I'm sitting at home and I don't know what it is, can the referees please just say what it's for? Just to get the frustration out of the players and the fans.
Doesn't it come up ruck infringement or whatever it is?
And then that's rugby union when everybody's in the mall and they just go, oh, ruck infringement, and no one at the ground, Johnny has played 4,000 games, doesn't know. No, I'm just saying for the frustration. Because
Were you happy with the refereeing?
in the second half when he gave us 6 penalties,
I'm talking about
I guaranteed New South Wales weren't happy with the second half.
I like
referee.
Ashley Klein as a referee, but it wasn't one of his best nights.
What about? Sorry, just going back on
Mate,
changes.
but Adam G's a better referee. But just on the six again for Ricky, for everybody, I think it's a bit of a cop out now for like referees. Like I really do. I love the rule. I love the rule because the reason why I come in is because every time they'd slow it down, they'd blow a penalty.
Yeah.
Then Cameron Smith would walk out. He'd have a cup of tea and a bicky with the referee. And then his team would get all the energy back and then they'd defend. And then he'd give another penalty and he'd walk out and he'd have another cup of tea and bicky and they'd defend. So to stop the players from slowing it down, the 6 again. So I love the rule. I love the rule. All as I'm saying is when you say it, don't say ruck infringement. Just tell me what it's for. So if I'm sitting at home with my son, right, and I go, oh, no, mate, they held him down too long.
Yeah.
Oh, they were offside. Hey, mate, they weren't square at marker. So then we know what he's looking for in the game.
I reckon it will get to that, Gordy. That's where we'll go as a game. That the explanation will come from the ref.
Yeah.
Just quickly on any changes. Surely
Stop trying to change our team here.
Surely you've got to imagine David Fafita will come into the side in some capacity, right? He's
an X factor.
You look at the impact of the benches, and you looked at the impact of the bench of Queensland when you've got Harry Grant, Mo Fodawaker, Capewell, and
Kafusi.
Kafusi
only got 8 minutes.
Fafita there. Surely there's room for David Fafita off the bench to come on and cause some destruction. I think he would be a very valuable addition to that side.
Yeah, I agree with that. And Gordy will be. Don't worry, the juggernaut will happen shortly.
What's that?
You'll be pushing for him shortly.
Who?
Fafita.
Would you,
You
Gordy,
will
would
be.
you do something a little bit left field? Like Josh Papali'i obviously retired, but I heard you raise this at the start of the series, and it's because there's
I
no
would go and
Tino
ask him.
and
I
there's
said
no
it in a
Flegler.
360 the other night.
You would ask him?
I would go to Josh Papali'i. If I'm Billy Slater, I would fly to Canberra and I would knock on the door and I would ask him, do you have 20 minutes in for Queensland? Do you have 20 minutes left in yourself at international or at state of origin level? Can you come and lay a platform for us and give us the best 20 minutes of your life?
Origin, please. We haven't focused on how good New South Wales went. And I mean this when I say it. Payne Haas, that was his best ever Origin game. There's been a question mark about, a lot of people have said, he can play well at Clubland. Payne Haas shut every single critic up. He was I know Crichton was good. I know Mitchell Moses won man of the match. But for me, what Payne Haas did, everybody that doubted what he was like at Origin level, get back in your box because he's an Origin footballer and he's arguably the best in the game in his position.
To me, I think the guys, Angus Crichton and Mitchell Moses, were the best 2 guys on the field. I think Mitchell Moses' kicking game was sublime. His long kicks, I remember Queensland getting a bit of momentum and he hit this ball and I reckon it went 70 or so metres and just took the air back out of our momentum. Crichton on the edge was absolutely outstanding. I said in the call when I called with Dan Gerds and Wado that it's probably the most dominant performance I've seen from a side. I thought it was the most dominant 40 minutes that I've witnessed, up close and personal. And I know that, I'm nitpicking because I forget, when Queensland might have won or the New South Wales side that beat us 56-16 their second half, they might have scored more points or whatever. But to be there in in game 2, which is a decider for Queensland, to go there and perform the way they did under the pump. And after what happened in game 1, I thought it's probably, to me, it's one of the greatest New South Wales performances that I've seen.
Yeah, the record books show it as well, Gordy, in that 34 points in an opening half of football was a new record in terms of state of origin contests. And the Blues were clinical, they were outstanding, but I still get the feeling as though this sets up for one of the all-time great deciders, because there is no doubt Queensland will be hurting, and they are a completely different proposition when you head back up to the burial ground that is Suncorp Stadium, because they've only ever won 2 series up there in deciders, New South Wales, 1994 and 2005 when Andrew Johns was playing. 1994, I think, was Ricky Stewart. So it's still an enormous build-up for this game, and I think we're going to be... It's set up for one of the all-time great deciders.
Yeah, and it's going to be obviously very different physically, emotionally, mentally, playing in that decider. Like, obviously, I have no emotional attachment to State of Origin. I love to see the game. Obviously, it's arguably the pinnacle of our sport, with international included in that as well. So watching it, I couldn't quite believe what I was seeing, that the level of dominance from New South Wales in that opening... from minute 7 to minute 40, fundamentally was absolutely incredible to witness through the television screen. It was everything that they did was sublime. The level of execution, the dominance through the middle, the
physicality, Jimmy.
the exposing Queensland level of fatigue. Looking at the start, I thought they were a bit out of sync, the New South Wales in attack, but then they just got everything right. Mitchell Moses, where Luai's boot comes off, he parks himself on the right and he just goes, no, bang, across to the left. Little plays like that are... Like, you could make a solid point that Queensland should have done better in that moment, but Mitchell's awareness in a State of Origin game where he knows the pressure's on, where he knows arguably you've got to play the percentages. Well, maybe that is the percentage there, the percentage play to sneak down a short side on last play and try and catch Reece Walsh out of position, because slow play the ball, kicking off a slow play the ball is a kicker's nightmare. They always talk about winning play 4 into 5. That's why so many fullbacks take that last carry to get a quick play. Cam McInnes, he's another one. He'll take that last carry for the Cronulla Sharks, fundamentally, to get a quick play the ball, to take the pressure off the kickers. Moses kicking off a slow ruck down a short side. What a play that was. That was sensational. But for now, we're talking about all those dominance and all the noise has to stop. Psychologically speaking, I think that's done. Like, now they go up to Brisbane in a couple of weeks, and nobody cares. We speak about the Brisbane Broncos players and their social media. No one's going to care about Beatlemania. No one's going to care that you won one game in Melbourne. The focus now is going up there and getting the job done in Queensland.
Well, as dominant as the Blues were for that opening 40 minutes, it doesn't mean anything if they can't go to Queensland and win the series, because the reality is they've won 1 out of the last 4 series, and Billy Slater's undefeated since he took over as the Maroons' main man.
And Gordy speaks about this a lot, about the scrapbook, and get your head out your scrapbook. And what do you want in your scrapbook? Your man of the match performance, or arguably player of the match in game 2 in Melbourne? Or do you want some photographs in there of you and your teammates lifting a series up in Queensland?
With the shield.
Yeah. Like that's fundamentally what it's going to come down to.
Yeah, I mean, Turbo coming back into the centres, it was reported today he's going to return next week with Manly in the centres.
I absolutely love it.
I don't think Madge brings him into the side. He might have him in as extended on the bench.
What's wrong with you?
No, I'd be very surprised.
That's 17 that play.
I get that. I just hear that, what I said.
Yeah.
He might come into the 20 as part of it.
No,
barring injury or suspension, then I would be stunned if Madge wanted to make any changes whatsoever. And that probably even includes, I don't think Nathan Cleary's going to be back until the Dolphins game against the Panthers, which is still a couple of weeks away. But that would probably even apply to Nathan, given the way that team was able to buy in and produce
and it's a tough one on that
the way
Cleary.
they did. Yeah, it is,
it's a tough one on Cleary, right? Because everybody's talking about Cleary, and when he won the grand final, we're sitting on 360, and Buzz was talking about him being a next immortal and better than Andrew Johnson. Well, if you're better than Andrew Johnson, you're immortal. Well, that's like Wally Lewis. No matter how good Queensland play, Wally comes back into that. So I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care what they win by. Like, no matter how good England win, Ellery Hanley walks into the side. Like, Ellery Hanley always, like, in the era that I watched just as a fan and as Wally, I'm not talking about my era, but you think Wally would always go in. You think no matter how good New South Wales were, Andrew Johns walks straight back in and grabs the 7 jersey. There's no doubt in my mind.
does Turbo have that status and that reputation to come straight back in? I think there's an argument he could replace Connor Watson.
I think if he played, if he just missed it for suspension, or like if he missed game 2 and if he hadn't had a long period out, I would say yes. I think coming back from injury, I don't think you change New South Wales. If Nathan Cleary comes out and plays next week and the week after, there's a decision to be made, right, for the future of New South Wales or what. That's the decision. But I would, like the way they played, everybody deserves their jersey.
Could he come onto the bench though, Gordy?
Nathan Cleary.
No, Turbo. For Watson.
What a player.
Like Turbo off, obviously Cobbo off the bench, raised eyebrows.
Yep.
Would Turbo off the bench be? And this is like Connor Watson, who's been a fantastic player all year, earned his spot, didn't get too many minutes. It is, if you're looking at the makeup of the team, does Turbo give you that cover for outside backs, but also somebody that you could throw on with 10 minutes to go, 20 minutes to go, if the game is on.
And just play through the middle, like a bit what Cobbo was going to do before the injury.
And if that was my tactic, I'd rather have Turbo than Cobbo, or respectfully speaking.
Yeah, I just don't think from where New South Wales have been in the past, with their changing and, when they say Queensland, well, I don't know. And then this is not a shot at New South Wales, but this is us talking about Queensland. There's probably 8 guys that have played 30 games. New South Wales have one, don't they?
Yep, Brad Fittler.
So there's a chance for them to show loyalty in their greatest win. As good as what the other guys are, I just think there's a bit of that, and that's what I was saying about the Wally. That's the top, and I would hate to be selecting it.
Well, I don't think Nathan will be back until the game after State of Origin 3. So I think he'll return for Penrith that weekend. So if that's a situation and that's the set of circumstances, then you would think, barring injuries or suspensions, then everything will stay as it is.
Because Mitchell Moses it's as dominant a performance in a number 7 jersey on that arena.
Well, no one put any pressure on him. Like, he had no kick pressure on him at all.
I get it.
None.
I get it, but it's a team performance. But mate, there was a couple of kicks when his side were under pressure and he turned a poor set into a great set.
He was very good.
What I mean?
But let's just see what it's like when he has a bit of pressure on
Queensland
him.
wrestled it back and we went and we were, pushing and we put a little kick in on their line. He just got the ball on the, on the 30-metre mark, and then Reece Walsh was catching it on the, 10 metres off his try line.
So why was there no pressure, Dobbo? Like, was that,
I think they were gassed. I think they were gassed. I think they defended. I think they'd absolutely been starved of possession. I think that 70-30% possession rate just took it out of them. I think Origin, if it's not even, it's a very hard game to win. And he was able to completely control the game because of that hard work that their middles did. Crichton, how unlucky was Crichton not to win man of the match? He was, like, to me,
Angus?
Unbelievable. Like, just Angus
it was
Crichton,
a developed print photograph. There wasn't a lot in it.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, like just huge. Either way, I used to always say you don't lose, that Queensland won't lose at Suncorp, and I still believe that. I genuinely believe that. I do think that this New South Wales side will come here far more confident than any New South Wales side has come here.
The reason why Queensland haven't lost is because they performed.
Yep.
It's not Lang Park. It's the way they've played in that arena. And Hoop spoke about 94 and 2005. Well, 94, I played in that game, and that's probably one of the greatest New South Wales sides in 95. Well, and then 05, that had Andrew Johns. And then if you look at that side, so for this team to replicate what 94, and if you look at that side and you read that side out, probably had Lazarus, Harrigan, probably Clyde, Elias, Daly, Stewart, Fittler, Eddinghausen, Brasher.
Gordy, is it dangerous?
McGregor.
Is it a dangerous mentality to have that is your last game of state of origin, that's your last experience, is that game too? Because it is such a different proposition up in Queensland. Like, if you go in expecting it to be similar to Melbourne, you will be in for a rude awakening when you get there.
No, because I think New South Wales learned a lot about themselves being down to 12 men, to be quite honest. And like when I was saying that they were in the game up to 65 minutes, I think that was their real tough, hard-nosed, grinding performance. And of course, as soon as they went down to 12 men as a Queenslander, it's the only State of Origin game in the history that I've watched that I felt really comfortable, right? Because I'm thinking, well, we can just get through our sets. And maybe Queensland, right? Maybe subconsciously, they just had to get through the sets and know that New South Wales were going to run out of gas by the end of the game. And that's pretty much how it panned out. Maybe in game 2, they just thought, well, if we get through our sets, this is where we're going to be.
Yeah.
And it didn't work. So I think Queensland now know exactly how. I don't think New South Wales can play that good again. I really don't.
Yeah.
Right? But I think Queensland can get better. Queensland haven't had that performance yet. And if New South Wales get close to that performance, well, it's going to be one heck of a game if both of them play close to their potential.
Look out